Hi, I'm Helen. Now, let me take you on a journey that changed everything I knew about trust and betrayal. At 26, I was balancing a career as a dedicated nurse and managing my personal life, which was already hard. I worked long shifts at a busy hospital, often skipping breaks to make sure my patients got the best care. Even though I was tired, I found joy in my work, knowing I made a difference each day. But outside the hospital, another challenge was waiting for me, a financial burden brought on not by bad luck, but by my own family. My parents always acted like victims of bad situations, whether it was because of failed investments or unexpected medical bills. They always seemed to be struggling with money, and their stories were convincing. My heart went out to them every time. "We just need a little help to get back on our feet," they'd say, and I believed them, thinking their need for help was only temporary. Out of love and loyalty, I made a choice I would later deeply regret. I gave them my credit card, trusting their promise that it was just for a little while. That card was supposed to be a temporary solution, but as weeks turned into months and months into years, it became their endless source of money. At first, I didn't notice the lies. I was too busy with work and too tired to look closely. When I saw new gadgets at their house or heard them mention dining at fancy restaurants, I didn't think much of it. They always had an excuse. "Oh, these are just small treats for ourselves. We've been feeling down," they'd say. I'd nod, too exhausted to question it. But slowly, the truth started to bother me. Things like a brand new TV or a designer watch on my dad's wrist began to catch my attention. They called it a small splurge and brushed off my confused looks. Then, one evening, everything became clear. I came home to find a delivery at my door, a luxury handbag ordered online with my credit card. That's when my suspicion turned into a harsh realization. I knew I had to confront them. As I drove to their house, the weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my heart. I walked in, holding up the handbag, my hands and voice shaking. "Mom, Dad, where did this come from?" "Oh, Helen, do you like it? We thought it might cheer you up. You've been working so hard," Mom said, her voice overly cheerful. "With my credit card? This has to stop. We need to talk about all these expenses," I replied, my heart heavy as I prepared for the difficult conversation ahead. They sat down, their faces shifting from surprise to defensiveness. I spread out months of credit card statements across the table, each one proving their betrayal. The room grew quiet as the truth of their actions became clear. This was the turning point, a moment when I had to take back control of my life and finances. Later, sitting at the bank, I stared at the loan officer in disbelief. "Declined? But my credit should be excellent." "I'm sorry, Helen, but your debt-to-income ratio is very high, and there are recent charges that are, well, quite extravagant," she explained. I grabbed the printout, scanning the charges. Hawaii, designer boutiques, none of it was mine. It hit me, my parents hadn't just taken advantage of me, they'd gone way too far. "I need to see every transaction from the last 6 months, I demanded, panic and anger rising in my voice. Armed with the records, I drove straight to my parents' house. The documents felt heavy, like the weight of their betrayal. I slammed the papers down on the kitchen table. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk, now," I said, my voice firm. "Helen, what's going on? You're scaring us," Mom said, glancing at the papers. "Scaring you? Look at these charges. Hawaii, luxury boutiques. When were you going to tell me about this?" I asked, my anger barely controlled. "Oh, Helen, we were going to tell you. We just needed a little break. You know, a bit of happiness," Dad said, his voice weak and pleading. "Happiness? At my expense? Without even asking me? Do you realize you've nearly bankrupted me? I can't even get a loan because of what you've done," I shouted, the frustration boiling over. "We thought you wouldn't mind. You've always helped us before," Mom whispered, avoiding my eyes. I mind a lot. This isn't helping, it's stealing. You've been living a life of luxury on my hard work. How could you do this to your own daughter?" I asked, my voice breaking. Their silence was all the answer I needed. Their eyes stayed down, unable to meet mine. "We're sorry, Helen, it just got out of hand," Mom finally said, her voice full of regret. "We don't want to lose you over this," Mom pleaded. "Sorry doesn't fix my credit score or rebuild my trust," I said firmly. "I'm taking my card back, and I'm taking steps to protect myself. This stops now. No more access to my finances." "But Helen, we need your help. Without you, we—" "No," I interrupted. "You need to figure out how to manage without relying on me. I'm not your bank. If you had been honest, Maybe we could have worked something out, but not anymore. I need to protect myself. As I left their house, the air felt heavy, charged with the weight of our broken relationship. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect and independence. I had been their safety net, their endless source of funds, but that was over. As I turned the key in my front door, I stepped into a new chapter of my life, one where I was no longer a victim of their choices, but in control of my own future. The day of their trip came, and I felt a mix of dread and determination. Watching Mom and Dad pack, chattering excitedly about beaches and luau's, made my heart ache. They were so lost in their fantasy, funded by my hard work, that they didn't notice the storm of emotions inside me. "Hey, I got you a new credit card. The old one's been acting up, keeps getting declined at the scanner. I don't want you to have any issues on your trip," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my emotions were all over the place. "Oh, Helen, you always take such good care of us." "Thank you, sweetheart," Mom replied, her voice full of gratitude, which only stung me more with its irony. She swapped the cards without even a second glance. Watching them pack, I added, "Make sure you keep it safe and don't lose it, okay?" "Of course, darling, we'll be careful," Dad said, giving me a quick hug. I hugged him back, my stomach churning with the weight of what I had done. The card they now held was a dummy. They had no idea that their access to my finances was finally cut off. I watched them drive off to the airport. As soon as their car disappeared around the corner, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, only to be replaced by another. The heavy anticipation of what was to come. I headed back inside, my steps feeling heavier with each moment. Over the next few days, my routine centered around checking my online banking app constantly, my anxiety growing by the hour. Then it happened. The first notification popped up, a charge attempt at a luxury resort for a lavish dinner, declined. I exhaled a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. Later that evening, while I tried to distract myself with a book in my quiet living room, another alert came through. This time, it was for a spa treatment, declined again. I could almost picture the scene, Mom and Dad, relaxed and unaware, suddenly confused as the spa attendant politely handed back the card, a frown on her face. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be a problem with your card. It's been declined." "That can't be right. Run it again, please," Dad would insist, his voice confident but tinged with embarrassment. After the third attempt and yet another apology from the attendant, their confusion would turn to frustration. I imagined them stepping aside, calling the credit card company as their perfect holiday began to unravel. The phone rang late into the night, but I let it go to voicemail. Mom's voice came through, filled with panic. "Helen, darling, there's something wrong with the card. We can't pay for our treatments, and they're quite upset. Can you check on it for us?" I waited, gathering my thoughts before calling back. "Mom, I'm looking into it. I'll see what I can do," I lied, feeling a pang of guilt but reminding myself that this was necessary. They needed to understand the consequences of their actions. The next day brought more declined transactions, a shopping spree, a helicopter tour, a gourmet lunch. Each notification was a step closer to their realization and my freedom. This tough love was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was crucial for my own survival. They had to learn, and reality was the only teacher that could get through to them. Early the next morning, the phone rang again, piercing the silence. I braced myself as I answered. Dad's voice, usually so confident, trembled with desperation. "Helen, please, we need your help. We can't pay for the hotel, and they won't let us check out until we settle the bill." Taking a deep breath, I steadied my voice, making sure each word carried the weight of my decision. "Dad, no, I won't bail you out this time. Do you even realize what you've done? Years of lying and using me. Enough is enough." "But we're your parents, Helen. You can't just leave us stranded." We apologized. "Okay, we're sorry." Sorry doesn't change the past, Dad. It doesn't erase the debt you've piled up in my name, and it doesn't rebuild the trust you shattered. You need to understand the consequences of your actions, I said, my voice firm yet steady. They had crossed too many lines, and now, it was time for them to face the reality of what they had done. "Helen, we really didn't think it would come to this. We thought we could manage it, that you wouldn't have to know," Mom said, her voice a mix of pleading and regret. "Not have to know? You committed fraud in my name," I replied, the weight of their betrayal echoing in the stillness of my kitchen. "I've already taken steps to prevent any further damage. The card you have is cancelled. You need to figure out how to get back on your own. But we have nothing here, no money, not even for a flight back. Please, just this once more, Dad begged, desperation in his voice. No, Dad, this is the hard lesson you need to learn. From now on, you handle your finances, and I handle mine. No more mixing, no more helping out. It's time for both of you to take responsibility. As their protests grew more frantic, a pang of sorrow hit me, for the parents I thought I had, but that feeling was quickly overshadowed by a stronger sense of duty to myself. I need to go now. I hope you find a way back, and I truly hope you learn from this. Goodbye, Mom and Dad. Hanging up the phone, the finality of the moment settled over me like a heavy blanket. The bridge had been burned, the ties cut. It was a decision shaped by years of hidden exploitation, now painfully exposed. I sat down, a swirl of emotions taking hold, grief for what was lost, but also a new sense of freedom from the financial chains I'd unknowingly worn for so long. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if it, too, was breathing a sigh of relief. This was my new reality, no longer a victim, but a survivor, no longer a daughter manipulated by guilt, but an independent woman stepping into a future I would control. I stood in my modest apartment, watching the sun dip below the city skyline, the weight of my decisions wrapped around me like a cloak. It was done. The calls to my credit companies, the fraud alerts, consultations with a financial advisor, every step carefully planned to secure my future. In the quiet of my living room, I dialed legal services, ready to hold my parents accountable, not out of spite, but necessity, to prevent future betrayals. Yes, I'd like to discuss options for financial fraud committed by family members, I said to the person on the other end. Their reassurances were a balm to my frayed nerves. With each action, I felt the chains of my old life, one defined by their needs and deceit, fall away. I was forging a new path, one that was finally mine. Filling out the paperwork for the fraud report, my hands were steady. I detailed the years of financial abuse, and as I submitted it, it felt like closing a door that had let in nothing but storms. This is to protect my future, I reminded myself, the mantra easing the sting of reporting my own parents. The days that followed were a blur, meetings with my bank to restructure my accounts, setting up new, secure financial protections, and therapy sessions to work through the guilt and betrayal that had knotted up my thoughts. One evening, after a particularly long day, I walked into my apartment and felt, for the first time in years, a sense of peace. I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Mom and Dad. My hands trembled as I opened it, half expecting pleas for forgiveness or more manipulative excuses, but instead, it was an apology, real, or at least as real as it could be given the circumstances. We understand now the pain we've caused, they wrote. While we can't undo the past, we hope you can find it in your heart to forgive us someday. We're getting the help we need to manage our finances and our lives. I let the letter fall onto the counter, a sense of finality washing over me. Forgiveness seemed like a distant and winding road, not something I was ready to travel just yet. Right now, it wasn't about them, it was about me. It was about healing and building the life I deserved. That night, as I sat watching another sunset, a cup of tea warming my hands, I felt a profound peace settle within me. The ties that had once bound me were not just loosened, they were severed, leaving me free to create a future on my own terms. A future not dictated by guilt or manipulation, but one driven by my own choices, integrity, and the hard lessons I had learned along the way. Freed from both financial and emotional turmoil, I was no longer just Helen the daughter, the nurse, or the enabler. I was Helen the survivor, the architect of her own destiny. As the sun disappeared, leaving the sky streaked with colors of hope, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be, free. Now that Helen has taken bold steps to free herself from financial and emotional manipulation, how would you handle a similar situation with someone close to you? Would you be able to make the tough decisions necessary to protect yourself? Let's discuss in the comments below. Share your thoughts and experiences. If you found Helen's journey inspiring or thought-provoking, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Your support helps us bring these important narratives to light. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments.